All right. Hello and welcome to Know Your MIP number 3. Today we got a couple cool presentations coming at us. Juan's going to kick us off with the core unit operating model. That is the MIP set he proposed with help from Mio and El Progreso, Frank. So looking forward to that. And then afterwards, Dennis is going to give a quick presentation on some kind of accounting backend stuff that can be applied to that. So before I fumble over myself too much more, I'm just going to toss it over to you, Juan. I assume I have to let you share your screen though, probably.
Good. Yeah, I'm already sharing, I think. Can you guys see it?
Not at the moment.
All right.
It's popped
How
up
about now?
Looking good.
Sounds great. All right. Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks, Pros, for hosting this or co-hosting. I'm not sure. But yeah, as Pros said, I've already given a very quick quick intro to this. Everyone, or not everyone, but most of you guys have seen it in the forums and provided great feedback. I'm incorporating a lot of that, but who knew that writing a MIP or a MIP set in this case would be such an endeavor. So yeah, happy to be here. And remember, if you want to interrupt me at any time, please do. I'm happy to answer any questions if I'm not being clear. So with that said, again, to go over the context, why are we proposing this MIP set? So the foundation is dissolving, Maker Foundation is dissolving, as many of you have heard. So ideally, we find a structure so that the DAO can take over all the tasks and manage them properly, right? So one of the great questions that came up is like, why don't you guys throw a budget at domains? So we did think about doing that. One issue that we see with this is that, first of all, it's not exactly clear how to create a domain and be approved by the DAO. So there's a lot missing on that area. And the second thing is that as many or as more domains pop up to fulfill different needs that the DAO might have, we might find issues administering all this and managing all the domains, right? So that's why we decided to call them core units and roll with that. The reason is to be more flexible and to be able to to manage it in a very simple and flexible way. So I think David was that asked, is one core unit one domain team? So it could be, and most likely we can see domains just joining as one core unit. We already had a mini discussion with Nick regarding oracles, and I would see that being a good fit, for example. And so yeah, that's one of the things. Or a domain team could decide to kind of split by specialization and occupy different core units, or the opposite. One core unit could say, okay, let's take these two domain teams and put them together under the same core unit, and then we can measure it. We can take it from there. The second point is the temporary measures. So we've already seen Sam asking for a budget, which is great, and I think everything's going through, if I'm not wrong. So that's something good that the DAO wants to pay for services they get back and for value. The downside is that it takes a lot of overhead to actually deal with the whole thing, right? So if you're a maker holder and you're not entirely sure what's happening, one of these comes up, so you need to get familiar with the whole thing. If we have a structure in place, then it's much easier to say, all right, I understand what this is happening. These guys want to create a new core unit. They want a budget. This guy's a facilitator. I know them. So it's about replacing temporary measures for a structure that everyone understands, that it's simple, that it's flexible, and that we can all approve on. And yeah, again, it's about managing it in a simple way. And the last point is about the growing complexity. So we are So first of all, there's a lot of the things that the foundation is covering, kind of like behind the lines, and I'm glad to see a lot of the people from the foundation here that I've been in contact with for some time now. So this is something that the DAO sees a little bit less. So it might be harder for a maker holder to see all these things that are happening. And as we take more challenges, for example, the real world assets, this is something else that could also be important to take and to structure in different core units. So yeah, basically that's a little bit the context behind this framework and how we're structuring in a kind of like very simple and very flexible way. Are there any questions up to now, or any comments? Something I'm missing? All right, let's move on to the next slide. So as I was saying before, yeah, the core unit operating model is what we believe to be the first step. We want to be able to build on this. We think that this is the easiest way for what we have right now to transition to, and yeah, that it's capable of accommodating the current structures with minimal changes, and also the newly delegated operations from the foundation. So I think that's something important, and the core unit at its roots, the idea is that we can build on it. So I think again, David was giving some valuable feedback regarding the how to pay, right? So anything that has to do with budget implementation. So the idea with this is that we don't directly decide on. So a budget is a budget, and then the implementation is something separate that can evolve with time, but it's something that it's not comprised in this MIP set. Same thing for accounting. I think Seb brought it up. So anything that has to do with accounting, reporting, multi-sig, anything that has to do with something on top of this, it's great, and we can add it, and that's what we're looking for. But this is like the very first step. So this is a little bit the the map, which looks like buy, and then there's profit, and like some magic in the middle. But it's a little bit like that. It's the initial approach. This is what we believe it's the first step. Very simple. Taking all the temporary measures. One of the examples is the PSM, right? So that's something that the foundation could not cover for legal restrictions. I don't know if restriction is the right word, but concerns, let's say. So because of that, the community stood up, built the smart contracts, the UI. We also have Adrian in the call. Maybe we can comment on that a little bit later. But yeah, another great example of how the community can rally around something, and the DAO can pay for it. It provides value to the DAO, so it's something good for everyone. So ideally, after this, we can keep building on it and potentially arrive to the target operating model where everything works well and everyone is happy. And again, it's about having a coherent framework that works. So how does this work, and why do we believe that it's the flexibility for the DAO? So right now, and yeah, a little bit of a leap of faith with me, but if we do forget about the foundation for a second, we have the DAO with its revenues and governance, and then what the DAO wants, it's pretty much a set of services. So we believe that the best way of managing this right now is to allow people to create core units. Of course, the DAO approving them with their own budgets and their own facilitator or facilitators for every core unit, and they can on their own terms hire contributors, companies, create DAOs. I mean, the possibilities are quite endless from that end, but we believe that this is the very basic step or first step to start building on that. Any questions up to that? I want to not go too fast.
I added a question to the chat. I feel like I could read it out loud.
Yeah, please.
My question was, are core units meant to map closer to essential function services rather than teams of people? So, using the example of domain teams, it was a lot more like team centric rather than like function centric. And I was just curious if that was like part of the design or part of the thinking behind the design.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, and the answer is yes. And I know that it's not very clear, but we want it to be flexible. We want on one side we want the DAO to be able to pay for whatever they want, and on the other side we want anyone that has the skills and the good approach and can convince the maker holders to do it, to be able to access that capital. So on one example, we have teams or domain teams, for example, right now they are doing this all this, or they're providing these services to the DAO through the Maker Foundation, but potentially they could be completely independent, and they could be just doing this, right? And you can also very easily imagine someone saying like, maybe I don't know if real world assets would work as an example. I'll borrow it, and Seb, forgive me if it doesn't work very well. But if someone says I want to do this, it's more like a project based thingy, or I want to expand the DAO in this direction, make a DAO in this direction, then you could also create a core unit with a kind of like with a temporal scope in mind, and you want to achieve A, B, or C. And then once that happens, you can, I don't know, either move the pod to a new utopia, or just call it a day and thank everyone and go home. I don't know. Taking MakerDAO to L2, for example. If we want to do research and say, okay, let's see where this takes us. How can we implement MakerDAO in L2? We need R&D for that. So someone could come up like, hey, I know these 3 other guys, we could do it for this much money. And then governance is like, yeah, sounds great. So why not? So it's not very strict in that sense, and we don't want it to be strict. We want it to be flexible enough so that the governance is happy with the things coming up, and that people can be creative enough and propose their own services on their own terms and get whatever they want. I don't know if I'm missing any other questions. I don't know, Pros, if you want to read them.
Not missing any other questions from the chat. I did have a question though. Like, let's say you are leading like a working group right now. How should you be looking at this MIP set if you're like, all right, well, I want to continue this working group once we make the transition. So how would you begin to approach this MIP set in terms of getting that continued functionality?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are a lot of situations where this is going to happen, and I think it depends on yeah, on the approach of the potentially either the working group or the facilitator, right, or the to-be facilitator. The way I would do it, and if you can, like, if you come up with a better approach, by all means, go ahead. But the way I would do it is I would show governance how what I'm planning to provide is valuable. So if you're building, I don't know, let's say you build toys and you say, hey, I want to put a sticker of MakerDAO. We did it with this other company. We raised awareness by 1,100 whatever percent. It worked really, really well. It's going to cost you this much. I need it for this for the toys, this for the designer, this for whatever. And governance is like, yeah, that's super cheap. Let's do it. You can take it from there, right? So that could be your working group right there, being a core unit, or you can make it broader if you want. But for me, the important part is that governance is happy with this, and that it works for them as well, because they're the ones getting the service. So the maker holders are the ones taking paying for the services. So it's important that they agree with that. And then whatever works for you. I think it's a little bit salesy in that sense, but I would do it like that. I don't know. I guess anyone can take it from anyone. I think that some critical groups, such as risk or oracles or smart contracts, will have an easier time convincing governance. It's like, hey, you want to exist a month and a half from now, then yeah, please pay over here. But but yeah, some teams probably have a higher effort on the sales department. Any other questions so far?
I have a question. It's more sort of like what Pro stated, it's an example question.
Mm-hmm.
How would this work, a core unit work in a cross-functional kind of like objective? So something like collateral onboarding or something, given there's only one facilitator per core unit.
So there's two things to that. The first one is that a core unit could potentially hire anyone with any skill sets that they find that they need, right? So if someone like Primoz, for example, decides to create a core unit and they hate dealing with anything that has to do with admin, they could hire someone to deal with all the admin, I don't know, HR, whatever he doesn't like. So that's super flexible in that sense, and as we'll see later, the budget is something that's binding, but you can pretty much almost do whatever you want as long as you're reporting it and it sounds reasonable for governance. It's all fine. So that's on one side, and then I think that the other thing that's going to be slightly more challenging is interaction between different core units and who's taking the stack, right? Who's paying the bill. So if I can see someone that's working a little bit for, I don't know, helping along with governance, helping operations, and at the same time maybe doing something for risk. So I think that's going to require a little bit more of juggling around and coordinating until something's more established. And to answer your question more directly, if a group is kind of like borrowing people, they can pay the invoice directly. Kind of like borrow resources. Like I can see someone saying like, hey, Chris or Brian, do you guys have like maybe a smart contract developer that you can lend us for a month or two? We need to develop A, B, or C. So yeah, take it from there and kind of pay the invoice if needed, and they could use that budget that has been freed for a while to hire someone else, for example. I hope that answers the question. So I don't think there's an easy answer to that. I mean, I think we will need to start using it, see what works, and improve. I don't think that this is the perfect solution, but I think it's a very strong and flexible solution to the first step. All right. Any other question regarding this?
I guess to follow up to Amy, so that means like any person could be a part of multiple core units then, correct? Like there wouldn't be, just because you're in the risk core unit doesn't mean you can't help out with oracles or what have you.
Yes, absolutely. And there's something that we're trying to work on, but I've seen multiple potential implementations of this, and I'm really looking forward to eventually get something. But right now, it's not very. So the knowledge and the talent that we have in MakerDAO, it's not fully mapped out, meaning that sometimes we don't know exactly who our contributors are and what their skill sets are. But we do know that there are people that could potentially work in different core units. So in this case, yeah, as one same contributor or company could work for different core units and be and get their money from any of them, right? So it's good in that sense. All right. Please interrupt if there's anything else. Yeah, moving to the example of the core unit. This is like half joking and half serious. So Nick does love Borussia Dortmund, but I wouldn't expect that to be on the application. But something that he did mention in the forums is all the things that the Oracle's domain team is doing right now. And my answer was that that's a great mandate to start, because it's quite clear what they're doing. There's a little bit of quantifying as well. So it's I think that it was a really good starting point. The name Oracle sounds good. Everyone knows what they do. Again, Nick is quite well known, and his credentials are well known. The commitment is quite obvious. So I'm not going to go into much detail, but if someone else would like to do that, I don't know, you can check the, I think Amy's sub proposal to become to be in the ops team is quite good. The one from Long as well, so you can check. Those are all sub proposals, but I think that they work for showing commitment and credentials, right? So that's from the facilitator point of view. And again, you could have one per core unit, or you can have multiple. And then moving to the budget. The budget has two parts. One is the implementation, and the other one is the breakdown. So the implementation is a number, and this, I think we need to work a little bit more on this. And depending on if the keg is ready or not, we will have different a different approach to this. But yeah, an implementation could be anything. Could be a manual transaction, could be a simple transaction, meaning every month you get, I don't know, 100K, or could be something more advanced. And I don't know if you guys have seen MIP 42, which proposes, I think, minting maker for, yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like providing maker as a reward to potentially, it's like receiving shares a bit on a startup. So potentially we could include an implementation like this on the budget, right? And the core unit could also have multiple budgets. So you could have like the base budget to pay your expenses, pay your contributors, and then if you meet a certain amount of targets, maybe this is particularly useful for the business development, for example, you could have a bonus. So this is something that we can implement thanks to this. And I wanted to say something else, but I think I'm slipping my mind right now. Are there any questions regarding this? I can imagine that there should be. All right, amazing. Otherwise, I've lost. Either I've lost everyone or everyone's completely on track. I hope it's the latter. So yeah, again, very simple. The implementation is we need this amount of money. I recommend everyone filling the sub proposal, and there's more on that in the next slides, to leave a little bit of buffer, A, and B, to try to think of growth, right? So for example, if Nick says right now we are 10 developers and we're spending around 800K, but we think that we want to grow to potentially double, I would encourage him to ask for double that. And then you don't need to use it, right? It's fine. It's just the amount that's available for you to draw. So you can, if any of your expenses grow, or if you need to do like an emergency audit, or if you need to, I don't know, cover any type of expense that you were not expecting, then you can use that to pay for that. So yeah, the buffer and the growth, I think they are important to keep in mind. And then the breakdown is just explaining the logic. I think I'm not sure, Seb, if you have posted it in the forum, but I think Seb started writing
Not
down
in the forum, but I can share it in the chat.
Okay, so Seb started writing already a breakdown for his own budget, right? And he did this before this MIP Set was finished. But now it's quite easy to, or it should be relatively easy to adapt to this MIP Set. And I think Amy asked me last week, should we tell people to wait for the MIP Set to be completely finished? So right now I am incorporating a lot of the feedback, especially thanks to Long, even if some people might argue that he hates me after seeing all that long feedback that he left, but I really appreciate it. And also Pablo is helping me a lot on the edit part and to try to make it more clear and to incorporate all these comments and questions to make it much more approachable, right? So so on that end, I am working on them, but we don't expect any major modifications. The one that I've already commented on is that when we wrote it originally, it was just one facilitator per core unit, and then yeah, I heard a lot of good arguments to put several facilitators per core unit. So let's try to restrict it less if there's not a good reason to restrict something. So yeah, that's that on the budget side. Any questions? All right. So moving on, the modular approach is a little bit what I was speaking about in the very beginning, right? So we might have right now we have the MIP for the facilitator that we're working on, but potentially someone in the future could start defining different governance powers, for example, or different type of powers for different facilitators, right? So there's another MIP or MIP set that could come up, and it would be compatible with this. Same thing for multisigs. I think I'm not the only one that believes that we probably need some sort of control mechanism where we have more than one person signing for all these cash flows. So that's potentially another great MIP to write and to be inspired by. So that's on the facilitator side. On the core unit, again, we could have this adapting for domains or potentially new teams or working teams, as we mentioned in the beginning, but also new initiatives, as Amy was saying. And these two already I touched upon in the beginning. So any type of reporting and any type of accounting, if we believe that the DAO needs a certain type of accounting, we could start requiring a certain type of reporting, right? So it's like, hey, we need, I don't know how much or how much gas you spend on transactions because we need to report that to whatever. So that's something that could be included and potentially changed in the future without affecting the original MIP and having to edit several several MIPs on the way. And the last part regarding the budget, as I was mentioning, there's the manual. There's also the KEG if you want to do something simple. For the advanced, we have the MIP 42 that's coming out, but any other type of implementation that you guys can think of, we could implement as a budget and attach it to a core unit. Any questions so far?
One, taking your example of gas costs, let's say I've been focusing on the smart contracts team recently. So let's say we, of course, have a lot of gas costs around submitting executive proposals. Should I be breaking that out as some sort of an estimate over a period of time, or would that be too much detail?
You mean on the sub proposal?
Yeah, in the sub proposal, yeah.
I think that it's I mean, you can go as much detail as you want, but I think it might be an overkill at some point, and you might lose a couple of the readers. I think that if you say usually or during the last year at this cost of ETH and at this cost of the average gas transaction, we spent this much. So to be safe in the next year, we would expect to use something around this. So it's just showing, hey, I know my numbers, I did the math. Happy to answer if someone says, hey, how this looks too high, you can be like, well, no, look, we implemented this and this, it takes around this much. So I think that if you know your numbers and you present like an overview, again, we can put attachment or like an annex or something, but like it's not mandatory to go super into detail. It's more like it helps, and of course someone like you would know all these numbers. So it's I think you already have half the trust of the people. And yeah, just
okay.
don't forget to account for potential growth and for potential gas price hiking a little bit. So I would definitely encourage for a buffer over there. And then again, you don't need to use all the money. It's more about is governance allowing you to use that. So the implementation is the hard part. Hard as in binding part. So anything that's binding is like you can spend. Potentially, you don't even need to use the money the way you said you were going to. But then governance is going to be like, why are you not using it that way? So if you say, hey, we had these emergency things to do, and there was this, and we had this attack, then people are going to understand. And the only issue is that you cannot go over the limit in the implementation. So that's the binding part that will be hard coded into the smart contract. So that's why I'm encouraging for buffer and growth potentially. And if you use less, even better. You're being a responsible core unit facilitator.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions?
In the event of a budget surplus, I kind of understand what I think would happen. It would just get rolled over into the next budget or whatever. But what happens in the event of a budget deficit? Like if a team underestimated how much they need?
So I think, and maybe Long can help here or someone more technical than me, but I think the way it works is that you're not using the money. So you're not taking the money in your budget. So you could not accumulate budget. So the way it works is like I'm saying, hey, David, you're the core unit facilitator for core unit ABC, and your budget is, I don't know, 100K per month. So you can draw up to 100K per month. And anything that you are not drawing, it's like you're losing it a bit. To be honest with you, I don't know exactly in this kind of implementation for the keg how it would work. Maybe is Sam here? I don't think he is. But
I think David was more asking about the opposite situation, right? What if you get to like day
Both are
20, get day 20 in the month and you run out of budget? Like, what do you do then?
Yeah, so you would be blocked by the by the smart contract. So there are different ways that you can do. One of them is like potentially a manual one-time draw from. So you would be adding like an extra budget, one-time manual, and then ideally you would not go over the next month. Or if you think that this is something that's you really miscalculated the budget, and you want to and you want to move this or increase this budget for a longer term, then you can just switch the variable. You would send the sub proposal, it would get approved, it would replace the previous implementation, and that would be it. So I don't think that it's going to cause much trouble, especially if we account for growth and a little buffer. But if someone does, there are mechanisms that we can use to draw more money.
I can see potentially it's going to be difficult to budget around things like Derek was saying around transaction costs, right? Because you then have to determine whether you're gonna like buy ETH at the start of the budgetary period and then like hold that, or are you gonna like buy it as you need it, but then you're exposed to like ETH price volatility, and like you're definitely exposed to gas price volatility unless you want to do some weird shit with gas tokens, right? Like, so that's maybe going to be tricky.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that's Derek's main problem right now, and what's not allowing him to sleep at night. But
I think it's fine. I mean, what I'm going to do is look at all the deployer addresses and look at their costs over a period of time, probably over a year, and just do some planning off of that basis. And then, I mean, that's a good start. And then we'll see how aggressive or not that is. And yeah, like you say, have a buffer in there that gives it a bit of a cap, but gives it some space. So yeah, that should be doable.
yeah, totally.
I'm honestly wondering whether it might be easier to do that separately from budgets, right? You just have a big list of addresses and we just tell governance like, we need these funded with ETH, otherwise things stop working. So please keep this funded with ETH.
I mean, but that's a good a good question, Long, and potentially a great solution. Like anything that's related to gas costs, it could be covered by one central unit that's just sending ETH around. I don't know. Maybe it's a bad idea. Maybe it's a good idea. We'll see if there's someone that wants to write a sub proposal about it.
It's something that can probably be handled by smart contract at some point. But yeah, it's we can deal with it in the meantime.
So back to Derek then. Yeah, next steps. I've seen a lot of you guys joining us on Rocket Chat and asking questions. I also got a lot of questions on private, and I'm building an FAQ that I'm going to publish relatively soon. But this is the Rocket Chat channel that we've created in chat.maker.com, and ideally there we can all help each other and yeah, help us with the sub proposals, ideas and whatnot. And ideally we can see what other people are covering to see if some things need to be covered and coordinate a little bit more. So let's see how this happens in a generic way. Otherwise, Amy will have to step up and start screaming around a little bit. But yeah.
Looks like Greg might have a question.
Yeah, sorry I didn't miss this earlier. So I had put this in the forums last night, but something I don't understand is what happens if you have a facilitator that spins up an entity to contract the DAO. This facilitator, through this entity, then signs other contracts with other service providers and then is voted out as facilitator. What happens to all of those contracts?
I think it's a very good question. So I think you're touching on something else, Greg, that's important to solve ideally before we start signing all the contracts. But I am assuming that once that, especially for anything that has to do with IP that you mentioned, I think that the IP, and I'm not sure how this is going to work. Maybe Amy has a bit more idea, but I think that the DAI Foundation is going to be owning anything that has to do with IP. So potential anyone providing or signing a contract with the core unit would have to give away that IP to the DAI Foundation the same way that as it happens when you're working for a company, right? So any creation, any type of new ideas will have to go to the DAI Foundation. So that is something important and something that would have to be agreed upon, or at least be clear, so that that people don't get surprised. Another thing to touch upon that, and maybe Adrian can give us a better overview, but they did build the PSM UI, for example, and it's open source and it's out there on IPFS deployed. So it's like something that anyone can copy and fork and change, and it's not that they're going to go behind them and sue them, right? So it's so
yeah,
I
no,
think that's
more so than IP. I'm thinking of let's say the business development rocket gets up and running and they sign an integration agreement with a vendor in Argentina, just for example. Yeah. Now this agreement is between the facilitator's entity and the vendor. So if the facilitator can no longer meet their obligations of that agreement, then we're probably going to lose that integration that we already paid for.
So the short answer is yes, but I mean potentially this this provider. Am I mute? No.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say, you can put clauses in the contract for like transferring it to another entity or something? Can you?
You know, I'm not saying there's no solution. I'm just curious if anybody has thought about this stuff yet.
Yeah, so there's two things. There's what Long was saying, like, hey, there should be a clause to transfer this in case this happens. So I mean, ideally, and this is my hope or wish, we would have standardized contracts that we can share around and improve with this type of situations. But something else that we're working on is to have an interim facilitator to step into a core unit if that core unit becomes leaderless. So if any core unit has a budget attached, they would still be able to draw funds from the protocol. But if the facilitator, I don't know, disappears, or decides that doesn't want to work anymore for this core unit, or they are voted out by governance. The plan right now is that all the other core unit facilitators would vote or would assign someone as an interim core unit facilitator. So it could be someone from the same core unit that really knows how things work and that they know that everything that needs to be paid, for example, or it could be someone else, ideally, that knows how the things are working a little bit in that core unit. So once that happens, this new or this interim facilitator would be able to start doing anything that's necessary to keep the core unit afloat, make sure that the contributors are being paid, make sure that anything else or any obligation that they need to fulfill in order for services to keep running are actually being paid to be able, well, so that we don't have this problem where everything is just stopped to a halt because this issue happened. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
I have also a question. It's more related to a topic that I think we have talked before, is how a specific here a facilitator can contract another, let's say, a company, and this company definitely should invoice for the service that it's creating. And the thing is, right now, for instance, if a facilitator in the current content contracts somebody else, probably that person could invoice the foundation, and the foundation pay the bill. But under this structure, is that contemplated somehow, how that would work?
Yes, thanks for the question. It's actually the perfect segue. But we actually have. Okay, first I'll answer the question. So potentially a core unit can decide to do whatever they want to do. So they could create their own company, their own DAO, their own entity anywhere in the world or wherever they see fit to provide the services to MakerDAO. So with that in mind, we do know that this can potentially be quite hard or challenging, or I don't know, maybe you don't even want to do it, right? You just want to code. You're a developer, like you don't care about this legal stuff. So actually Dennis is here from accountable.dk, and I think he has a short presentation, but I think it's a great example of how someone could potentially hire a company to help with these kind of things. So Dennis, if you want to share your screen and explain a little bit more what Accountable does.
Absolutely. Thank you, Johan. I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Do you all see the screen?
Looks good.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So here, as Johan mentioned, I'm here to address a few issues that we've been hearing about in the community in relation to exactly this, as once you have your team and you get your DAI, how should you actually spend it? Because you might have people, service providers, employees, partners that are not able to accept payments in DAI or would prefer to have Fiat and have all the benefits of regular employment, healthcare, pension, what have you. So for these issues we've heard about, so would I have to make a corporation? Do I need to be incorporated somewhere to make contracts with the external providers? How do I go about employing people around the world? What about making payments? Do I need to go out, establish a corporation, get a bank account so that I can pay my contractors or whoever in Fiat? What about taxes? If I do incorporate and I do receive DAI, how do I handle the taxes? Since essentially, if you incorporate and you get your DAI, that becomes a tax subject once you receive the DAI. Liabilities, you're going to have to sign some contracts with some sort of suppliers. You might have terms in those agreements that you have to fulfill. What about accounting? If you incorporate, you have to do accounting. You have to maybe get your financials audited. You have to file, I don't know how many forms. And how do you handle fiat? You would have to get your DAI liquidated and in order to get fiat to spend for your employees and so on. So those are a few of the issues we've heard for now in regards to that. And I'm here to tell you how we from Accountable can help you address those issues. And also, please, guys, if you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to interrupt me. So our thoughts on servicing a domain team. So we already have a legal entity that is capable of acting as your counterpoint for suppliers, employees, and contractors. So we already have the setup that can help you with this. We have relationship with a PO. A PO is a professional employer organization. That's basically a service provider that can help us employ people in pretty much any country, any place in the world without having to set up a local corporation there. Of course, the PEO, the professional employer organization, needs a legal counterparty to act with, and that's what we have in Accountable. We are currently registered in the Philippines and have our corporation here. You can pay us in DAI. In order for us to help with this, we'll take care of converting it into fiat and pay any provider needed or any employee. We can also help you get debit and credit cards for your running subscriptions, whatever you need for Google or basically whatever subscription you have. Any questions so far? All right, go on. So what we're going to do is we're going to help you get the overview of how you're spending your funds. We'll send you a monthly summary of any expense you have, matching the format of your approved budget from the community. We'll do payroll according to your wishes, and we can help you pay suppliers in any currency, as we do have the bank accounts and everything set up. We can also help you do payments in DAI that might not be relevant. We can do it if you want to include the expenses in the summary that we are going to send you. But of course, it could also make sense for you just to pay your own suppliers in DAI to those who will accept DAI. As I said, we already have the entity here. We are also able to establish new entities that will be able to handle all compliance matters. Any supplier contract that you're going to want to enter, we'll sign it using this entity. Of course, only in agreement with you. We maintain the fiat bank account to pay any supplier, and we'll help set up the debit and credit card. So how does it work? So you get your DAI payment from the community. You'll send us the DAI to cover your expenses. We turn the DAI into fiat. We use it to cover your employee costs, benefits, suppliers, contractors, what have you. And we will establish the relationship with the PEO, and we'll onboard any employee you need in order to take care of withholding taxes, W-2s, and other kind of legal issues. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I have one question. Just when you say you get DAI payment from the community and you send it back to your company, does that mean that at some point I have the ownership of the DAI? Can the DAO directly send the DAI to you?
I don't know if the DAO will, the team will send the DAI to me, and then I'll convert it into fiat and spend it on the expenses as approved by the team. But there will be some intermediary, so you will get your DAI from the community, and then you will forward it to me. I don't see us getting it paid from the community.
Yeah, just that if it goes through me, it's a taxable event, and there can be some liabilities.
Yeah, is that
That's
a problem?
why I'm asking the question.
Is that a problem on your end, Adrian, or is it like because technically the DAO can send DAI to like any address, right? So
yeah,
on the DAO side, we can do that.
Wouldn't have a problem with that. So that's definitely an option. It's also easier for us in order to keep track of where did the payment come from for any AML issue. So that would be fine. I don't have a problem with that. Of course, our initial thought was that the team will have it in some kind of a multi-sig that's not legally owned by someone, and then forward it to us. But if it comes from the protocol straight, that's also fine.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Dennis, can you maybe walk us through an example? So let's set up a small example where I have a core unit. I'm the facilitator, and I said, "Hi, Dennis. I have one guy in the States, one in Argentina, and one in Australia, and I'm here in, I don't know, Europe. So how would it work with you? Like, what do you need to know? How is the process to set everything up and get this going?"
Yes, so you approach me and say, basically, I have these 3 people. They are not too happy accepting DAI because, you know, they need Fiat to pay their rent and they need someone to take care of their withholding taxes. So I would like to establish an employment-based relationship with these guys. So that's fine. Of course, have to ask you for the details on those people. They would have tax identifications numbers, social security numbers, etc. And once I have that data, then I can onboard them with our PEO, our professional employer organization. The professional employer organization will ask for a deposit because someone will have to guarantee for their, you know, for their the minimum time you have to keep them employed. You know, in some jurisdictions, you can't just fire people, so you'll need to deposit an amount for their termination time. And of course, I would ask you to cover that. Other than that, we'll just go ahead and onboard those guys, and we'll pay for the salaries as we go along. And the relationship between the professional employer organization will be with Accountable as the counterparty. I hope that.
Yeah, so that's more on the onboarding, and then once that happens, the only thing that you're waiting for is the DAI to convert it to fiat and pay everyone.
Yes. Exactly.
And the deposit, you have to give the deposit for as many months as you're obligated to employ them after you fired them, which is, I don't understand. Why would anybody want to do it? I'm so confused. I've been trying to understand this. If they don't like DAI, they can always exchange it for fiat. Why would I pay you to trade their DAI to fiat?
In case you don't want to go through the hassle of making a corporation on your own that can employ people, taking care of tax returns, filling out forms, having your financials audited, have the risk of doing some kind of mistake in your corporation, meaning that you'll get dissolved by the IRS or whatever authorities you have where you are. And you will have people that would prefer to get their payment, their salary, in case you're going to employ someone working for your project, with benefits taken care of, withholding taxes, etc.
I think it's easier to get a mortgage in some countries as well if you have like a steady salary compared to. But yeah, I can see both.
I have never
both
seen
approaches.
anybody working on a blockchain who does not want to accept crypto payments.
No, but you might,
yeah,
you might have a team, and you might want to employ people that are not, you know, happy to accept crypto as their payment. So I understand for anyone involved directly in the community, of course, maybe they would prefer to get the crypto payment. But I also see that external suppliers or employees that you want to take on might want to get their employment and the benefits that it comes along with.
Yeah, and potentially a company, right? Like, so we were lucky that Dspot accepted DAI from us, so that made things much easier. But I can see many companies being like, I don't know what DAI is. I don't want to know what it is. Just give me my money, my fiat, and so yeah.
When they said that, why did you? When they said that, why didn't you just trade it to fiat and send them a fiat? I don't get it. Why do you need intermediary for that?
Legally,
I mean,
you
the
need
whole
to.
idea of a blockchain to get rid of intermediaries, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're going a little bit off topic. I think it depends, no? Like you can decentralize some kind of things and get rid of certain intermediaries. I think that taxes are inevitable. So yeah, I think that this.
wanted just to add something, if possible, regarding in general for the company. For instance, my company is here in Poland, and for all our accounting, so we can receive crypto. That's fine, but it's very hard to account all that. Accountants are, I mean, they are not happy when you are getting your invoices in crypto, and your lawyer is also not happy as well. So if we have, and I don't know if your company could in fact solve this, but if we can invoice just a company who is going to pay us in fiat, and that company is going to receive the DAIs from the community and send us the payment in fiat, even if we would like to pay that, because that solves a lot of issues in accounting and legals that we don't want to deal with them, to be honest. So this is just an example of somebody who wants to make that exchange from DAI to fiat themselves. We are an example of that, in fact.
So what you would need was actually just an entity somewhere that you could invoice and then essentially get your DAI in fiat.
Yeah.
Yeah, not something I've thought of. I'll definitely put some thought into it. Maybe it could work, maybe it couldn't, because at somewhere someone would have to invoice someone in DAI, and who are you going to invoice for the initial DAI payment in order not to be taxable for the sale that you would then make to your entity in Poland. Let me put some thought in it and then see if there's a workaround for that.
Yeah, because that's a big issue when you are a company. You can't hardly invoice the Ethereum address. So that's why if you can invoice a legal entity, that's a big win for all lawyers, at least.
Yep.
All right. So thanks for the comments, Marina. I don't know, Dennis, if you want to add anything else to the process. So once that is done, do you have maybe an idea, or you can provide an idea of the, I don't know if it's average is the right word, but the amount that we would need to lock when hiring someone? Does it change from country to country? Do you have like lists saying if they're French, you need to sell a kidney and
yeah, you probably have to sell a kidney to onboard a French employee. Sure.
All right.
But it's very, very different, because it really depends on the amount you're going to pay people. It depends on what kind of healthcare plan you're going to give them. Do you give them a pension? Do you have a special agreement with the employees as to the termination time? So it you know, in some countries you can let go of people at will. In some countries it's very hard to get rid of people. So the amount is very hard just to give you one figure or an example. An example wouldn't do you good, because I could tell you how it would be to onboard an employee in say Germany, but it would be completely different how you do it in France, say. So I would much rather give you figures on concrete examples, because it will vary a lot, also depending on the level of compensation you give people.
Can I ask you a really stupid question? If the person is so remote that they're on a different continent, why would you ever hire, first of all, where it's difficult to get rid of them, why would you ever hire them as an employee instead of a consultant, number one? And number two, if you're required to keep, 6 months compensation on the chain in order, just in case you decide to hire them, why not? They're so far away anyway. Why don't you find somebody in an easier country where you can fire at will?
Because maybe the right person that you really want, the genius, is in a country where it's hard to deal with crypto payments. Also, that person that you want to hire, you might need to persuade them to leave whatever they're doing now, and they'll say, okay, hey, but then I'll need some kind of agreement. I want my employment. I want my healthcare insurance that will cover my dependents, my children as well. So it would really depend on the employee that you want to onboard. Of course, you can say, I'm not going to do that. I'll only pay DAI.
But then I can just make a smart contract on a chain where I put deposit there instead of giving you deposit and paying you fees. if they're working on a blockchain, it's reasonably easy to set up a smart contract in case they get fired, they get this money or whatever. You can set up whatever smart contract you want.
So Marina, we don't want anyone to feel like they are obliged or forced to use any services. It was more like this is one of the alternatives. As I mentioned before, introducing him like you can build a DAO, you can pay your contributors however you want. At the end of the day, the core unit and potentially the facilitator is the one responsible of how the legal thing is doing. It's just that Dennis provides this solution that works quite well in this situation. If someone wants to deal with this type of employees, and as you're saying, there's always trade-offs, right? So someone that is in a more expensive area potentially will require a higher salary. So do you want to pay them more? Or do you want to get someone else? Those are always good, I don't know, HR questions, I guess.
I'm confused. Why the genius I want to hire in some country would not want to accept crypto if we're all working on a blockchain? And
no, they could. It's just that if they don't, and you really want that genie, then you probably need to go through a solution like this one. But it's just an example. We don't need to.
I don't know. Maybe you can come up with a better example. I'm mesmerized so far of your example. Sorry.
Okay, we'll maybe work on it. I don't know, Dennis, if you want to keep covering the process well.
So I'll just show my last slide for the one in the fine print. So of course, as I said, yes, you will have to pay me a fee to take care of this, as we have a team that's employed and will take care of handling all of this. So our thought on the cost will be that we'll put a markup on 10% of any expense that's going to run through our setup to cover the costs that we have for keeping the relationship with the employment organization and having banks accounts and having the financials audited, everything that you would have to pay for yourself anyway in case you choose to incorporate. Any obligation that we'll have to sign on your behalf with employees, contractors, suppliers, or any other party, we'll have to get a deposit to cover for the duration of that obligation, because of course we're not going to go out and sign 12-month contracts on behalf of you, take the liability on us, and then risk you leaving us the month after, and then we'll be left with having to cover the last obligation of the contract. And of course, should you need us to sign any non-disclosure agreement, of course we will be happy to do that as well. Those were the last points I had.
And how do you treat non-monetary liabilities? For instance, if I hire someone, a subcontractor somewhere in the world, and he breaks the maker, so maker is trying to sue you because he's sending DAI to you. Maker cannot sue anyone, but let's pretend. Do you take something on top of that, or do you read contract and see if it's okay for you to sign them?
We will read the contract, of course, but in generally, once that we do contracts with suppliers that are supposed to service you. It's not the other way around. So in generally, the terms of that contract would be more in the monetary terms, which could be covered by, making your payments. So of course, we'll not take on a lot of obligations going in other directions. It will be on the money, which is what you will deliver once they deliver the service. So that's how I see it. Of course, anyone can sue anyone basically in this world, but as the legal counterpoint, that will be the corporation that we use for this.
Okay.
I have a question. Is there like a minimum amount where this is like something you offer, right? Like you mentioned like sort of debit cards, credit cards, and subscriptions and stuff earlier. Like if the governance domain wants like like a $20 a month subscription to something, is that something you can provide? Or does it need to be like a larger?
For now, really, we don't have a minimum amount because we thought about it, but we have no idea what this is going to turn into. So for now, we just want to keep it easy, keep it simple, on board anyone who wants to try this. and take it from there. So we just try to make it as easy as we can. We don't have a minimum fee. We don't have you know, a ladder with different percentages to cover our expenses. Just to keep it simple, anyone is welcome, and the cost will be 10% on top of the expense running through our setup.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, something that I wanted to say on the mic, since Amy is too shy to say it herself, but something a good point that she brought up is that these expenses are good to consider when creating the budget. So try to not only think about anything that you can see, but try to think as a company and all these expenses that will potentially come up. Dennis is in the chat already, so if you have any questions directly for him, I'm sure you can, I don't know, maybe set up a quick call or ask him directly on the chat, and he can give you potential budget for different locations.
Yes, you're
so
welcome to reach out.
Great. What is the
Yeah,
handle? I think it's Dennis double-N, so DNNIS.MakerDAO, if my memory serves me well.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
I think that's an E in there.
Great. Thank you, Long. Any other questions for Dennis?
No, but I just want to say this is cool. It answers some of the questions I was having just earlier today. So thank you.
Totally. Thanks again for coming, Dennis. It was very helpful, and thank you for waking up at these hours. It's 5 a.m. for you, so I'm not sure if you're going back to bed or get a coffee, but thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on the call.
Nice. Thank you. And something else I wanted to cover before finishing. So something I said it already on Thursday, but just to go through them again. I'm incorporating the feedback, and I'm expecting to, I don't know, republish the MIPS this week, hopefully. Maybe not all of them, but at least the main ones, and the sub proposals, so that people can start working on them. If you have any comments or questions or need help with anything, reach out on the channel or privately. I can possibly help you with that. And then there was one more thing I wanted to say, but yeah, we're happy to here on the sub proposals. Happy to start seeing them. I heard interest from a lot of people, so hopefully they materialize in sub proposals, and we can start moving forward towards the path of decentralization. Are there any other questions or comments? All right. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone. It was great having you, and we'll put this on YouTube very soon. Bye, Planjax.
Thank you to Juan. Thank you to Dennis. Have a good one, everyone.